In this presentation, we look into the work of noted and favourite southwestern artist Granville Redmond. If one would have followed a cement walkway where silent film star Charley Chaplin left his footprints in times past and past the main property, proceed up a flight of stairs to a certain lofty corner of the big barracks-like structure at La Brea and de Longpre avenues, you will have discovered a studio within a studio. It is there that one would find the artist and his eldest son, Jean, often referred to as the Redmond and Son firm, as they liked to put it, in the commercial sense, or as Jean said, just my dad and I. Granville Richard Seymour Redmond was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on March 9, 1871. He contracted scarlet fever at around 2 to the age of 3, but when he recovered, he was found to be deaf. This change may have prompted his family's decision to move from the East Coast to San Jose, California. Granville then attended the California School for the Deaf in Berkeley, and from 1879 to 1890 his artistic talents were recognized and encouraged. There, his primary teacher was Theophilus Destrella, who taught him painting, drawing, and pantomime. When he graduated, Redmond enrolled at another CSD school, and from there to the California School of Design in San Francisco, where he worked for 3 years with such teachers and notable artists, Arthur Mathews and Academie Julian, and progressed rapidly. Early biographers remembered the time when Granville Redmond occupied a quaint ramble-shack studio out on Sechelle Street in Los Angeles, just before his leaving for Paris, with a companion, also of the School for the Deaf, both looking forward to concentrated study. So by 1893 Redmond was awarded funds from the California School of the Deaf, which made it possible for him to study in Paris at the Academie Julian under Jean-Paul Laurent and Benjamin Constant, 2 of the outstanding instructors, then instructing at the Atelier. While at Academie Julian, he roomed with sculptor Douglas Tilden, also of the California School for the Deaf. While in Paris, Redmond was productive, and won a distinguished award in 1895 with his large canvas Matin d'Hiver, which was accepted into the Paris Salon. It's a marvellous piece with the charm of French landscape, in that it displays softer tones and a quiet, peaceful view of a boat sitting at the water's edge. It is noteworthy that it was difficult for artists and would-be artists living in San Francisco and in the West generally to find ways to practice their trade. Opportunities in commercial illustration provided the best opportunity, and Redmond, like many other artists, were drawn to newspapers and local magazines, such as the Overland Monthly, as sources of revenue, not uncommon for artists just starting out. In 1898, he returned to California and settled in Los Angeles, where he painted many scenes of Laguna Beach, Catalina Island, and San Pedro. He was married in 1899 to Carrie Ann Jean, a graduate of the Illinois School for the Deaf, and together they had 3 children. Jean, the eldest son, would eventually assist his father as part of the firm, as they called it. While living in Los Angeles, he became friends with notable actor Charley Chaplin, whom he helped in perfecting his pantomime techniques. Here we see images of their collaboration. Chaplin gave Redmond a studio on the movie lot, and was active in collecting many of his paintings, and added him in silent film acting roles, including playing the sculptor in City Lights, and another feature part in You'd Be Surprised. By 1905, Redmond was receiving considerable attention as a leading landscape painter and fine colorist. Redmond's early works in Los Angeles were mostly softer tonal landscapes, scenes of farmers and their animals, very similar to the French school of Romanticism. For an artist working from nature, it becomes apparent that the subject matter for landscape painting is twofold. It exists partly in the actual outer world of nature and partly in the inner world of the discerning mind. In other words, the artist must not only paint what he sees before him, but also what he perceives within. To interpret what is the reason for the exhilaration and grandeur that the artist looks to put to paint. it will be well to consider these two aspects in the art of Granville Redmond. Similarly, as in the forerunners of landscape painters like Daubigny, Eugène Boudin, or Corot, who were the unquestioned leaders, made important transformations in seeing nature with fresh thinking. They impressed upon art a character of boldness and power, and if in certain respects their works appear incomplete and even sometimes of a somewhat coarser treatment of implementation, one always finds in them animated and vigorous originality, the lifeblood for the original thinker toward understanding the landscape. As we can see in this landscape of rolling hills, the marvellous implementation of bold zigzags from the distant mountains to the sloping valley that intersects wonderfully toward the viewer, and the stabilizing greyish trees on either side to anchor the picture so wonderfully, giving it a strength that would otherwise lead the road down too abruptly and weakening the general effect. Similarly, we find in the next picture rolling hills moving toward the right, with the smart use of diagonals to help glide the general effect of graduating land, and again the stabilizing trees to stop the movement and allow the viewer to reflect on the generous colouring in the foreground. In this picture it is virtually a humorous display of trees clapping over a rich tapestry of coloured wildflowers. The gaiety of the colouring is striking, in that Redmond cleverly spots into the hills the warm ochreish notes to soften the abundance of colours, which he calculates so well with a harmony that prevents a garishness that might otherwise spoil the unity. In this view we have the dancing clouds very delicately moving quietly in the background over a draped flowering hillside, almost as a quilted blanket, and again with the gradually descending diagonal slope that quietly exits the picture, while we pick up in the distance a vignette of a valley with repeating hills pulling us back into the central tree as another anchor point. In other pictures Redmond is much more introspective and allows the mood to be subtle and, yes, romantic. He utilizes the warmth of the softer glow of a foggy morning light to permeate the ensemble, still utilizing good colouring, and the heightened trees express the majesty of the landscape. His clever use of Naples yellow-coloured touches descending into the valley of soft blue-green shadows displays wonderful control of pigment and technical know-how. When it comes to sheer design for the sake of it, one sees Redmond enjoying the flattened approach to modelling of forms, a clever device used very well by mural artists and decorations of larger works generally. Here he is grouping his pieces like a puzzle in a dramatic fashion. The trees are no longer highly rendered aspects done realistically, but are instead pure design, blocking in the primary shapes and patterns. To explore in this fashion a landscape, or for that matter, any type of picture is, for the artist, simply a fun exercise. There are artists that choose to stick to a particular formula that works consistently well for them, while others venture only quietly into other directions to test the waters. But for Redmond, the waters were as comfortable to him and as discerning to paint as a duck to water. His ability to observe the seas and give life to the work is again quite remarkable. Here we have the playful clouds radiating from the distant waves as if celebrating over the calmer waters below. Yes, there is a connection, and the colouring is spot on. He has chosen to break up the small bits of colour in the sky to aid the liveliness of the whole. In the following picture the seas are very animated with lots of action as the waves break against the rocks. Once again Redmond patterns the waves with a beautiful arabesque, and then bellowing from underneath. The entire structure is designed in such a way that the colour and the masses are carefully choreographed as a tour de force in picture making. Redmond's biographer in a visit to his studio shares, "About 2 seasons ago Mr. Redmond went to Santa Catalina on a sketching trip and returned from the island with more than 75 sketches. Some of these he has worked up into completed pictures and sold, but he still has on hand a number which we may expect to see developed in interesting form very soon. This trip appears to have been a particularly happy one for the painter, wherefore the work which is its outcome contains a joyous note throughout. One very delightful canvas, which was not quite completed when I saw it, shows a familiar old sugar loaf silhouetted against a serene sky in which there is one central streak of glorious light. Another small picture, which has been reserved for Mr. Chaplin, shows the rugged cliffs rising out of the still water in the blue light of night. Beneath the surface, apparently, Charley Chaplin is not all comedian, and it is the sensitiveness in his nature and slightly melancholic vein, perhaps, which leads him to favour nocturnes and the misty, still, grey-day pictures in preference to the brilliant sunrises and sunsets. Granville Redmond covered a lot of ground over his many productive years as a painter. His study in America and France netted him vast knowledge in which to grow and experiment along the way, achieving the heights of interpreting the visual world. Landscape painting has progressed immensely over many generations, and from the oft-used term values, which has entirely replaced the Italian chiaroscuro, by which painters were long wanting to describe the light and shade of a picture, as apart from its colour, and the change was certainly a good one. Values are a pure convention, because they are built upon the assumption that nature is monochromatic, but a most important convention, one that is practically indispensable to a painter today, for it is upon sound values that pictures depend for their solidity and their convincing power. Good painting, after all, is a matter of analysis and a workable system. Further, the departing from brownish shadows to the effervescent violet tones adds another important step for the artist to assimilate into the toolbox. Granville Redmond well studied his craft with an understanding of the visual world. He was able to skilfully render on each canvas exactly what he set out to do. His confidence shows and is a delight to see in every work. And one last item we need to add to the clever work of Granville Redmond, and that is his use and understanding of vibration. It is the icing on the cake that the artist can give toward the true power of nature. That is it. It is a tool he uses quite well, and accounts for his ability to keep colour in check, while emphasizing the structure of particles in pigment of light. And finally, with that, thank you to our subscribers, and remember to add a like, so we can bring many more gifted artists to light. So, until next time, it's bye for now.